Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the We're So Young podcast. Today we have Sharon Joseph, who is the founder of Pooch and Hooch. What is that? It is a food truck, liquor truck, fun truck where I met Sharon at a dog park. So it is based off of different dog parks and different areas where you can drink and chill with your pets. Sharon, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I come from a background in advertising. I'm from New York originally, and now living here in Florida, where you and I met at the dog park. Just really passionate about creating. That's one of the things that's sort of innate in me, and so that's about me.
So you grew up in New York, you said. So did you grow up with dogs?
Yes. Yeah. We had dogs in the family. Always, they were usually bigger family dogs, and the stories of the dogs were always throughout the childhood that I had, and how we grew up.
So when you were growing up, did you know you wanted to go into advertising?
I always wanted to do a bunch of creative things, and still to this day I'm constantly creating or iterating. Originally, when you're posed with the question in high school, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I actually wanted to cook. I wanted to be a chef. And this was before the time that there were, celebrity chefs, and restaurant and hospitality life was the, opposite schedule from the rest of the world. And my mom, who was in business and sales and marketing at the time, and I actually asked her this recently. I reminded her of this conversation. She says, you're not going to want to be a chef because of the different schedule and the difference of what you're going to have to go through from the rest of the world. And so I went into business advertising and started my career in that. And now I feel like it's come full circle into Pooch and Hooch, where even though it's not necessarily me being a classically trained chef, I'm still catering to an audience and providing an experience through the cocktails and the environment and the entertainment.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit right before Pooch and Hooch, because I really love the story about how it came about. What were you doing before you started the company?
So my now husband and I met at the dog park. We were both renting near a small dog park in Miami Shores area, and I had a new puppy, Nala. You might hear her in the background of this podcast. And he had his dog, Max. And, when as dog owners, and this is actually part of the business plan in writing, we're sort of habitual, especially as dog owners that are in a rental. You go to the dog park same times every day, in the morning and after work, and you wind up seeing the same people at the park, and creating this community around your space and time, and around your fur babies. And so what wound up happening at that park was we created the dog park crew, with a group of us that were just always there at the same time, and we started bringing in our own alcohol and our own food, and creating our own little events and gatherings at the park so that our dogs could hang out and just run around, and we could hang out and unwind and connect with each other. And the dog park crew was such a tight-knit community. We wound up taking care of each other's dogs when people would go away, or needed an extra set of hands if they had to stay late at work, or go in early, or whatever it was. And so that was the nugget of the idea that there's no real experience, and this was back in 2010. There was no real experience where people could come together, in an off-leash environment. Sure, you can go to a cafe and have your dog sit on hot pavement on a leash with a small bowl of water, but that's a real confined experience. And I started imagining, what if there was this dog park that provided these libations and concessions to us.
It's super cool. It's super, super cool. And I love that you met your husband at a dog park. That is the cutest thing.
I mean, it is very rom-com, I'm sure. I know you're interested in writing screenplays, so I can give you more details on that if you ever needed it.
It's so cute.
And actually, Nala being my dog and Max being his dog, and the female-male combination, they, everybody would ask, are they brother and sister? I would say, no, they're boyfriend-girlfriend, and they were maid of honor and best man at our wedding, too.
Oh, that is so cute.
It was really funny. My sister, I'm sure she'll listen to this, during her speech, at our wedding, she wasn't really, we didn't have titles in a wedding, we didn't have a wedding party, it was just the dogs, and she opened with introducing herself, and she says, you may not know this, but I'm Sharon's sister because some other bitch took my place as the maid of honor. So I'm sorry if I cursed.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. That's super cute. Super, super cute. So the idea was conceptualized. Now, how did you go about executing it? What job were you doing at the time that allowed you to start to execute it, or did you stop completely, or what did you have to go through to get it to start?
It took a while, and like I said, Nala's 10 now. Max is no longer with us, and so even 2010, when we started saying like, oh, this would be a great idea, and I put pen to paper in 2014 for the first iteration of a business plan, it's still not a flip of the switch, and especially because I had mentioned earlier that Pooch and Hooch has not been my only creative idea. I've thought about a lot of things, and I'm sure at every family event when they're like, oh, my family probably nods and smiles and says, sure, you go and have your curious crepes, stand at the mall, or whatever fun idea I'd come up with at the time. And so when I was actually at this point in my career doing, it was an extension of advertising industry, which has iterated into what's called creative production services, where a lot of companies are skipping the ad agency and just going direct to content production. And so I was working for a few of those companies in New York, and I was commuting to New York from Florida, and it was just taking a real toll. And sure, it was super fun and exciting and demanding and lucrative, but it was getting to this point where I was like, is this really what the rest of my life is going to be about, and if not now, when, for Pooch and Hooch. And actually, even at that time, it was not decisively Pooch and Hooch, it was Bark Bar, and so it takes this initiative to say, okay, let's open it up, let's find some time. And for a little while, I was running the start of the concept in tandem with my work, and it was a lot, but it was a good drive to have, to say, at least I'm giving myself an exit strategy. I'm not just gonna wipe my hands clean of my day job right away. I want to try and lay down the foundation. I have a lot of expressions that I like to use, and you really can't build on wet foundation, so I wanted to lay down the foundation of Pooch and Hooch before I started building on top of it. So a lot of it was circumstantial. I besides the New York commute and the toll that was taking on me, our other dog, the 50% of the reason why my life exists today, Max, he had been diagnosed with bone cancer, and it was this really timely circumstance of, again, if not now, when? And
Right.
I said, if anything, let's just try. And I filed once we found out about Max and his time left with us. I filed for the LLC, and I started laying down that foundation. And I had an intern who was working with me at one of the companies that was actually based here in Florida. So this was several years ago, and she at that time was also looking for just a little work. And I said, it'd be great if you can come and help me get this started. So that was a big help. And a lot of the early stages of getting Pooch and Hooch just off the ground, and in flight, took people that I've met and come to love and respect throughout my personal and professional life, just chipping in and helping. One of the the design and the foundation of the social content was a husband and wife couple out of New York that I worked very closely with during one of my jobs, and still to this day, the wife, Taylor Peterson, she and I are really close friends. That she comes down every once in a while during a weekend that we're having events, just to come and see. And
that's awesome.
See this baby that we birthed.
Yeah, and it something really cool about creating an idea or executing an idea from scratch is seeing communities come together, and I think that's beautiful also, because that's essentially how the idea started. It was a community of people who just sat around, at a dog park enjoying each other's company, and now you're creating a community to build something bigger, so I think that's amazing. What would you say were some big hurdles you had to go through, dealing with finally filing for the LCC, and then with your dog, like at the same time? Did you feel like that was taking like an emotional stress on you as well, or was that propelling you to make sure you got it done?
I think more the latter of the propel. I'm kind of a personality that I'm building the plane as I'm flying it. I'm constantly trying to push beyond what is already, clearly mapped out. And so, because there's nothing really known, and no matter how, I'm not very scientific when it comes to that. I have the pragmatic side of things, but I will push through to make sure that if it's an idea and it's possible, then let's go and do it. The more the challenges, I guess, and to the notion of I kind of just want to keep pushing through no matter what somebody may or a situation may arise. I had this originally thinking that the concept was going to be my own land, my own park with a bar. Well, that's a really expensive, initiative to take on at first. So the iteration of that is what you saw, which is a 5x8 trailer that we outfitted to be a bar. And sure, we're serving food because of legally, and I'll get to the legalities of things that I learned that I just never imagined. Legally, we have to serve food if you're serving alcohol.
Okay.
You iterate it, and then you find out, here's a challenge that, okay, I'm going to have this bar and I'm going to bring it to dog parks. I'm going to bring it to an established audience. You can't just roll up to a city or a county park with alcohol. You need to be permitted to do this, and it's not just a regular permit. It's a special event permit. And so something that I thought was in my mind this really raw, easy to execute concept of I'll bring alcohol to dog parks has turned into almost behind the scenes in an event production company, because
Right.
I have to put on events for events' sake so that I can exist and have this business model.
Right.
And I started talking about the challenges of my own ignorance of how the food and beverage industry works. Is this the nuances of things that you constantly are learning that I had never been immersed in before in my advertising or content production career, was the legalities around it, and you can't serve alcohol out of anything with an engine. So unless you're
Wow.
a plane,
Okay.
train, or boat. So it can't actually be a truck. It had to be a trailer that we unhitch from the car, and we have to actually prop it.
Oh, wow.
We can't serve, we can't store, we can't save alcohol event to event because of the legalities of it. Imagine if you, as a beverage caterer, if you were hiring me for a function, a corporate function, or a wedding, or whatnot, which we happy to do too, if anybody wants to book us in South Florida. You don't want to have somebody else's purchased alcohol at your event. So the alcohol overhead is a really tricky concept to have to constantly juggle, because we are buying and anything unopened returning and then repurchasing event to event.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I kind of in my dream state imagine, like, I'm just gonna roll up and everybody's gonna be happy and drink, is where I thought the utopia would happen with this business model. And then the behind the scenes of just dealing with the operational logistics is something that I wasn't expecting, and that those have been certainly not deal breakers, but barriers. And nobody experiences that.
Yeah. And you have to go park by park and do a permit for them, or it can't even be county.
Nope.
That's hard. But I believe now it must be a little bit easier if you've already gone to a couple parks. You just kind of develop a partnership with them. Is that how?
Yeah.
Because I know that you go to Snyder Park at least at this month, was pretty regularly every weekend. So how does that work, creating those partnerships with those parks?
Yeah, it's just a lot of tenacity, and meetings and presentations, and I think that's where having the background that I did have in my former non-entrepreneur career was beneficial in getting this momentum and traction, and it's still ongoing, and it'll never stop until hopefully I have staff that can help with this, and help grow this. But Snyder Park actually being my personal home base park, I just kind of threw caution to the wind and said I'm gonna go there first, and that was actually our launch event in March 2019 over St. Patrick's Day weekend. And I originally reached out to the city of Fort Lauderdale. Snyder Park is based in Fort Lauderdale, and did the whole special event application, and I got the hand slapped a little bit that that's not how this works, and
Yeah.
of course you never know. And I think that's where a lot of people who might have these dreams of what could be, whether it be a small business or projects that they want to do or travel that they want to do, like, until they go and try and a little fail a little bit or scrape your knees a little bit, you won't know. And so you have to swallow your pride and say, okay, that's fine, tell me how it works, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And
That's such great advice, because it's true. People out of fear of getting told no will just not do it. Whereas being told no, I think, is what's going to make you excel at it even more, because you'll know the ins and outs.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And so that's where it unfolds into now you have, of course, with government, they want to have everybody everybody's buy-in,
Right.
and the classic term is the red tape, but it's also once you know where the tape exists, you know how to walk their line, right? So it's the approval of the park supervisor and his letter of agreement and endorsement, and then you go to the special events committee, and then you go to the city commissioners meeting where they approve it in total, and then you can be live. But even with that, all the terms and conditions that the city might have around making sure that it's a safe and successful event, not only for them but for the event host,
Right.
And so we have gone to a few other parks. I will say that just in this early stage, we've been operational for 6 months, and knowing that I've had this business idea for almost 10 years. The LLC has been about 18 months in the workings, in the works, and the lawyers and all these things. I'm just kind of in this cruise control state a little bit, where I have been doing a little bit more repetition, with Snyder Park being one of them. They have a dog swim lake, and they have what they call their Bark Park section, which is a green grass section, and it's just been frictionless for us. But other cities have been welcoming, and the special event and permitting process has been also working as effortlessly as I can hope for. But then there's then there's other parks that I'm trying to target that you get a lot of no before yes, you know. And so when you have those experiences already, and I'm getting a lot of traction with just the city of Fort Lauderdale, then I'd rather keep that going and get some following and some momentum and some consistency,
Yeah, because I think that the more people find out about you, the more clout you get, the easier it'll be to pitch it to like smaller parks, and they're parks that are unsure about it, which I think is hilarious, because I think it's a great idea. I think, but I also, just being someone who was at your little stop, it does not seem like you've been open for 6 months. It feels like you've been doing this a really long time. It felt very homey. It felt very like, it was a bunch of people hanging out, and it was great. I think it's a great idea, and it's a great. I think it's very marketable. How's your family taking this? Because you said before not in your old, but like when you think of an idea, they'd be like, okay, yeah. But now here's an idea that is fully fleshed and formed and taken off. What advice, or what do they tell you about it?
It's such a funny thing to have to really push through, especially when you spend your whole life like looking up to your parents, right? And your parents know better, and your parents are the guiding light, and sometimes it's because they say so, that you accept it, and that came to be when I was going down the career path of business advertising, because my mom said, don't be a chef. I'm like, okay, fine, I guess you're right, what do I know? My dad has had small businesses, and he's been an entrepreneur his whole life, and so I've really bonded with him over pushing this forward. And I think originally when I told him that I had done the LLC and I have the lawyer, and I actually spared the nitty gritty until I had everything what I call buttoned up, because I knew that if it was just this sort of fleeting thought to them, that it might not have been taken as seriously as I was taking it. So certainly the financial investment makes it very real.
Yeah.
When you're laying out money to make it happen, And you actually have the business plans, and you actually have the lawyers and the legal documents, and you have the agreements and the licenses and everything, and the research for the trailer that I wanted. It makes it real. And then it got to this point where I had mentioned that our launch event was March, over St. Patrick's Day weekend, and it was the beginning of February, and I was in the middle of a full-time consulting project, and I had that meeting with the city where they said, okay, we'll approve you. And I said, okay, great. And I came home, I quit the consultant project because I knew I couldn't do both at the same time at that time. And I had sent my dad a note saying, hey, I'm approved for my first event. I'm going to order the trailer. When can you come down and help build it for me? And then it becomes real,
Yeah.
And again, every step of the way, just the build out of the trailer, the decisions on the shelf and the sink and the refrigerator, and what type of chests do we need for the ice and the clean ice and the drinking ice or the non-clean ice or whatever it might be. It became this thing where, between my husband, who, still has a full-time job, Pooch and Hooch is not necessarily, he's a supporting role and very supportive. Between my husband and my father, they've had to, really help shape this with me. Some of it was collaborative, some of it was, directive, depending on which part of the triangle wanted to be in charge at that time, to say, this is what we think we should do to make this happen. So to get the long way to your question of what do they think, I think it's I think they think that I'm making it work,
Yeah.
My parents, actually, because they live in New York, they came for the launch event, and it was kind of a weird concept as a 35-year-old, that I was having my parents come to my launch event, and it was a little stressful for me because not only was I launching a business, but I was going to have my parents here, and I rationalized that, what else besides first days of school or the, a show like you perform in shows, or a major event like a wedding or a birth, do you have your parents want to come and celebrate something with you,
Yeah.
As much as I was stressed out and the idea that I would also have to, this notion that I would have to entertain them, because usually when they're visiting, I'm hosting, but
Right.
they got to see that launch, and see it be real,
Talk about that feeling of quitting your consulting job. How did it feel, had you been thinking about it a lot leading up to it? Did it feel kind of impulsive? What did you feel when you officially did it? Because at that point, when you quit that consulting job, that was, in my opinion, the official start of Pooch and Hooch, because you were just like, all right, here I go, full throttle, taking the leap. So how was that? How was that process for you?
I guess it was what I knew, it's what I needed to do, right? And
Yeah.
luckily I had already laid down the track to even be in a position of consulting, where I was I went into consulting for the same industries that I was working full time by September 2017, even before Pooch and Hooch's LLC and everything. So I knew that, this is not like quitting a full-time job. I'm already out there in the market to pick up project-based work, that when I'm ready to go back, and when I'm ready, and actually I'm doing that now, because now that Pooch and Hooch has been created and launched, and it's more of a weekend thing, I have the hours during the work week to continue to consult. At that time, I knew I would be doing the company that hired me, to consult for them a disservice, and I would be doing Pooch and Hooch a disservice if I didn't choose, right?
Yeah.
And I chose that, and I'm happy I did, because
it's been pretty successful.
Yeah.
How did the name Pooch and Hooch come about? I love it.
Well, I'm glad you love it.
Yeah.
It's so funny how many people kind of stumble on it too, and I'm sure even anybody who might listen to this podcast, you might come up with some rhyming names that are funny. Like I said, the first name that came to mind was Bark Bar, and then part of what I've done in my jobs for the full-time employers or even the consulting projects has done a lot of industry analysis and competitive research and total addressable market research and all this stuff. And so I looked up Bark Bar existed, and it existed in Colorado, and I thought we're in a day and age where at some point Pooch and Hooch might be more than just South Florida.
Right.
So, or the bar, might be more than just South Florida. So I wanted to come up with something that represented, a brand new name, something unique, something fun, something, memorable, and certainly is. And the naming of things, and again, going back to my, classical career in this content and advertising background, just started listing out all names for dogs and all names for alcohol, and seeing what matched up, and the fact that it became this platform for everything else in the experience. The hooch and the connotation of hooch being from a prohibition era, 1920s, where the irony is I am sort of in this prohibition time where you can't just openly serve alcohol in a park, and so I went with this whole, in the namesake theme of Art Deco, and we're in the birthplace of that Art Deco movement and 1920s and prohibition and just the experience of it, the that Gatsby style experience,
right? Yeah. And now that I'm thinking back on your logo, it all kind of just goes together. That idea as well. Yeah, no, it's very, very cute. So what is next for Pooch and Hooch? Like, what do you, not necessarily what's your end goal, because I think especially when it comes to projects like this, you just want it to get bigger and there's no necessary end goal, but what's the next step that you want to take with Pooch and Hooch?
I think we're starting to realize that we need some sort of fixed location. That would be the immediate next step. If I can have a park that would host us in a permanent situation, that would be a way to, I think, establish more of the following. Certainly the trailer itself could still deploy to dog-related events, but the business entity having a fixed location would be my immediate goal. Operationally, it would be a whole lot easier. We wouldn't have to necessarily worry about electricity and ice and all these things, and so to streamline that by having a fixed location. And it might be an actual established park that we become a vendor at the park. I admire something like there's a park in Fort Lauderdale, and I think it's Hugh Taylor Park. It's a state park, and so they have a shack that they've turned into Park and Ocean, which is a bar, and at some point I imagined it was really just the bathrooms, and they rented the kayaks out of that shack, and then somebody, I think it's a restaurant group, wound up getting licensed to be to have that residency there. So any bars out there, any parks out there that allows for dogs off leash who would like to have Pooch and Hooch, I'd love to apply. It could also take on the concept of just really a lot of land, similar to what Wynwood Yard had done, where it was pre-developed land and it became this space where what their concept was bringing in, different businesses or activities or events in this lot of land. Well, if Pooch and Hooch had a lot of land and really it's just a fence, and we could establish some sort of like a biz box or something on that lot of land to allow for dogs to run off leash and their owners to sit and relax.
Yeah, and that'd be great too, because then you would have the two, you'd have a fixed entity and then you'd have the traveling one that could be able to go anywhere else.
Yes, the roving speakeasy is what we call it.
Oh, that's great. And when you put up these events, because when I was there was a couple other people also. They had like little tents, and there was an artist drawing and stuff. Do you bring those people together? So how do you bring everyone together? How do you, because you're creating an event. How do you choose the people that, sorry, that was my alarm. How do you choose the people that are, that go into these events with you?
Getting back to the root of, now I can't just show up with a bar, I have to put on a special event, and part of putting on a special event is pitching that I will bring in dog-related vendors and activities and host that. And so once I'm approved to do that and I have the approved amount of space to do that, and the site plans that I have to mock up in Photoshop and all the aerial views and all these things, I just start doing, right now at this point I have sort of this repertoire of people that I can reach out to first, because they've bought in as a vendor for past events. But and then what I tend to do beyond that is I'll do a search around the park of dog-related businesses, and whether it be on Etsy or Instagram or just web search or Yelp and things like that, to say who we are, what we're doing, the event, give them the event package that I had already presented to the city and gotten approved, and say, do you want to be a part of this? One of the things that's really important to me is not to have competing vendors. There are a lot of dog-related events that are a forum for, a big open space that you can have more than one, doggy apparel vendor, or you can have more than one artist, or more than one photographer, or more than one vet, or whatever it might be,
right,
because they'll just take anybody and everybody. But for me, because it's such a small footprint and it's supposed to be an intimate experience, I don't want to create competition between vendors. So I make it very clear that if somebody's already in who's providing a similar product or service, that space is taken, and we'll consider them for the next event.
Right. So. That there's so many moving parts to it. It's so insane. Because I know absolutely nothing about doing things like that. So it's so interesting to me. So we are approaching close to the end of the episode. If you could go back and tell the girl that wanted to be a chef something, maybe like right after your mom was like, oh, I don't think that's what you want to do, what would you tell her?
I don't think I would have done anything differently, but I probably would have explored more around what my wants were instead of what I should be doing, so even if it would have been a little bit more extracurricular, just to have the touch of the experience, I don't think anything would have changed from the career path, but I still think that at that time I probably would have explored more, and instead of just doing we were that time, that high school into college time, you kind of just, nobody really questioned things, and
right.
that's only changed, I think, in the last 10 to 15 years, where you really challenge, I'm on the older side of the millennials, but the younger millennials and the newer generation, the Gen Z, is challenging the convention. And at the time, I think I was thinking about challenging the convention, but I didn't,
Yeah. What are one of those sayings that you say you have? Because you said the you can't build a foundation on a wet floor.
You can't build a house on one foundation.
Yeah. What's another one? Give us another one.
Oh my gosh, I have so many, but one of the ones that is like a Sharon Joseph original is that for me, a fresh pedicure and a full tank of gas means that the possibilities are endless. And I think it's kind of a metaphor too that, literally, if you have a fresh pedicure, then you have any shoe option, right? When you don't have a fresh pedicure, you're like, okay, I'm going to wear the closed-toed shoes, which means I'm going to have to wear these pants or this dress or whatever. The outfit, builds up from the feet up, and the full tank of gas, and you can drive anywhere, is just that endless possibility metaphor is really important to me.
I love that. Okay, what is something new that you've done recently? And it could be Sharon, or it could be Pooch and Hooch. It could be anything.
I mean, the whole episode was Pooch and Hooch, and that's still brand spanking new. I don't know. I'm having these new thoughts of not necessarily being fixed to Florida again.
Okay.
And so making that a possibility in conjunction with this business in its infancy is something new that I think I probably should pump the brakes a little bit, but I like this whole conversation has hopefully exemplified. I probably won't, and I'm just diving headfirst into the new location and the new possibility.
What brought you to South Florida originally? We never spoke about that.
So I was working in Manhattan in 2008, and for an ad sales company, and we were all out at happy hour, and at the time I was really close with the CFO, and she might have had too much to drink and told me that the company was going under. So I had a love interest in Miami, but I wound up applying to every ad agency in Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Miami, and I wound up actually, and maybe I pushed it a little bit more because of the love interest. I wound up getting a job at an ad agency in Miami, and so I moved in August 2008, and that love interest doesn't exist anymore, and got Nala in 2009, met my now husband at the dog park, and the rest is history.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how one speck and one thing that there was no way that at the time you were going to imagine, meeting your now husband, there was a whole, that is my favorite thing about time. Time is something, man. That is one thing that I've learned this year, is time is something, because you look back at that one speck of moment that brought you here, that brought you to Miami, to get Nala, to go, that's incredible to me,
Time is the universal currency, right? And so however we use it is our own, gain or debt, and I think that's obviously, just constantly pushing for that. And getting back to your new question, even though that one speck of, something that happened in time where I moved to South Florida, it was so unconventional, to be a New Yorker, to have everything, at the center of your universe, to leave that, and people didn't understand, and it wasn't normal to do. And I had told myself that sure, it wouldn't necessarily be a permanent thing. And so now I go back to that, 11 years later, where I'm like, well, even though I have permanency in my life between my family and my husband and my now job that I'm and business that I'm working, it doesn't have to be permanently here. Let's go experience something new somewhere else and bring this time and this space and this energy somewhere else.
Yeah, that's. Oh, hi, Nala.
She agrees.
Yeah, she does. She does. No, and that's great. That's what this whole podcast is about, is being able to, is not limiting yourself to one thing and just taking the leaps and continuing to grow. So what's something new you would want to try aside from your business?
I would want to try. It's so hard to think about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so teeming with ideas of the present. To think about the future. I think it's more not necessarily try. It's just get back to, because I really used to travel a lot when I didn't have a lot of these things that I was responsible to in a fixed location. And so what could be the new in the future is just getting back into that and actually spreading out a little further than I normally have. I want to get to Japan and Southeast Asia and
me too.
And India and South America, where before, and that would be new for me in the future, because I really, before, my travel was really either business based, or if I could fit it in with whoever else was doing something at the time, because I was just constantly having my hands in a lot of different things. And so being able to in the future have this new opportunity to have the time and have the resources and have the comfort that whatever would be holding me normally to a fixed location wouldn't be so grounding. I could have a little bit more flexibility to do that.
Right, yeah. Traveling is an investment, and it's hard. It's particularly for people, I think, in the United States, to take that leap of traveling. I'm a big traveler, but it does put a hole in my pocket a lot.
Yeah.
So how are ways that people can reach you? What's your social media? Do you have a website?
Yeah.
If people want to book you.
Sure. So the website is Pooch and Hooch, but you spell out and.com. And we're very heavy on Instagram. It's all about Instagram these days.
Oh yeah.
With our target market, so it's same thing as the website, at Pooch and Hooch, A&D. The Florida Facebook page is Pooch and Hooch FL, and hopefully I get to see all the humans who love their dogs and day drinking out at one of our parks sometime.
Yeah. And all of this information is going to be available at the Meet Our Guest section in the We're So Young podcast.com page. So if they didn't catch it here on the episode, they'll be able to catch it through the website. Thank you so much for doing this.
You.
This was so fun.
It's time to get a drink now, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
some what was it, frosé is what I had?
Frosé.
Oh yeah.
We'll hang out at the park. Thank you, Diana.
Thanks again for listening to the We're So Young podcast. Like what you've been hearing? Help spread the word. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate, review, and tell your friends about We're So Young. And don't forget to follow us on our socials, at We're So Young Podcast on Instagram, at We're So Young Pod on Twitter, and We're So Young Podcast on Facebook. Let's all get inspired to try new things together. That's it for now. Tune in on the 1st and the 15th of each month for new episodes. Until then, step out of your comfort zones and try new things, 'cause we're so young.